Hello fellow friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about something that is often forgotten. Jimi Hendrix made a change to his setup in his very last phase. But did this change influence his tone, or was it pure voodoo hoodoo? A dedicated viewer asked me about a tube-shaped object he saw on stage when Jimi played in Maui in 1970. This marked the beginning of my research, and I was surprised again how obvious Jimi's setup switch was and how easily it could be overlooked. So here's what we do today. I'll share my findings, for which I upscaled and analyzed photos, and I'm showing you what's going on stage. Then we'll do a sound comparison of the old setup versus the alternative setup. Finally, I'll provide my conclusion and explore 3 possible reasons that could have led Jimi to make this change. Okay, let's first get to the bottom of that tube-like object. Initially, I wasn't sure what it was or how it was connected. But then, in one scene, Jimi Hendrix drags it a little bit behind him. Could it be? His guitar was directly connected to that thing. And then it became clear to where this cable led. It led to a cable extension, just like this one. I have something like that at home. Look at this. This is the tube-shaped object here. So it was pretty clear the guitar was going into the extension, and when Jimi dragged it, we can see that tube-like thing moving on stage. And here comes the big thing, at least for me. Once I realized that, I noticed that Jimi's guitar wasn't even going into the wah-wah pedal as it usually did. But where was it going? Well, let's find out. Let's take a look at this picture here. And let's try to find out where the extension might lead to. So we have this tube-like thing, which is the actual extension part that is connected to the guitar cable. The guitar cable is a black cable, and we can see this in the picture. But then we also have a light-colored part, and that's the other end of the extension, or essentially it's the extension's cable. And to me it seems as if it goes into the uni-vibe's input. And here's why I think so. Despite 4K enhancement, some pictures, some photos remain blurry. But in this picture here, you can see fairly well that the extension is actually a light-colored cable. And the light-colored cable goes into the input of the uni-vibe. And we also see a black cable coming out of the output of the uni-vibe. Are you still with me? I hope so. Sometimes the enhancement of the pictures produces small glitches, and it makes it even more difficult to detect what is going on. So let's take a look at the unprocessed picture right now, because in this picture here it becomes clear that the black cable is crossing over the light-colored cable. This means it lays in front of the light-colored cable, and due to the construction, due to the layout of the classic uni-vibe, this translates to the uni-vibe's output. It means the black cable comes out of the uni-vibe's output. Looking at the next picture, which is this one here, the realization seems entirely logical, because a black cable goes from the uni-vibe's output into the input of the wah-wah pedal. Another clue that underlines this theory is, upon closer inspection, you can see that the black cable coming out of the wah-wah is routed under the fuzz, and then it reappears over the drum carpet, and it passes the foot controller, and from there on it's continuing. So it seems pretty logical that it goes to the uni-vibe, or vice versa, that it comes out of the uni-vibe under the fuzz, and then it goes into the input of the wah-wah pedal. And if you take a look at these pictures from the stage, it's absolutely chaotic cable routing, but I'm quite sure that it is like I just said. So we have uni-vibe, guitar goes into uni-vibe, and from the uni-vibe out we go into the wah wah pedal. So the next picture that I'm going to show you is pretty clear. What we see is another light colored cable coming out of the uni-vibe, and you know, the position where it comes out is pretty clear. It's the cable for the uni-vibe's foot controller. And friends, believe me, the following picture is way more exciting. On this picture, it's perfectly clear that a light colored cable leads out of the wah wah pedal. Logically speaking, even though it's another long light colored cable that leads into somewhere and into the mess, into the cable chaos on stage, it's only logical that it must lead to the fuzz and to the fuzz's input, of course. And by the way, I suspect that the input and the output of the fuzz had been switched because it's just more comfortable and you don't have to go underneath with the cable that leads into the fuzz. So let's examine the following shot of the fuzz then. As we said, a light colored cable goes out from the wah-wah, from the wah-wah's output, and it makes a turn and then it goes into the input of the fuzz. And another light colored cable exits the fuzz. And here comes the logical consequence. The light colored cable coming out of the output of the fuzz leads from the fuzz into the high treble channel of Jimi Hendrix's Marshall Plexi. And from the lower high treble channel, we can clearly see the daisy chaining that occurs here and that goes from left to right, as we can see in this picture. Before we move on to the sound samples, let's quickly summarize. Jimi's pedal order for his Maui gig was guitar into uni-vibe, from the uni-vibe to the wah-wah pedal, from the wah-wah pedal to the fuzz pedal, and from the fuzz pedal to the amp. So let's take a look at some pictures of that last leg of the 1970 Cry of Love tour, because he did not only switch that pedal order for the gig in Maui, but he also did so when he played in Scandinavia, in Europe, in Sweden. And of course he also used this new pedal order for his gig at the Isle of Wight, as we can see in this picture here. We'll be comparing different tones of Jimi Hendrix's usual pedal setup to the alternative pedal setup now. For these sound samples, the fuzz and the uni-vibe's preamp are always on. I don't know if you hear it, but to me it seems as if the new order of the pedals is affecting the tone and the dynamics. It's subtle, but it's there. Another Another thing that came to mind while hearing the tones swirling around in the room here is that I hear more clarity in the overall tone of the alternative setup. The preamp of the uni-vibe is hitting the pedal chain first, and so there's already a juiced up signal going into the wah and then going into the fuzz. That means it has a tiny bit more drive on the one hand, and on the other hand, it seemed to me that the signal is warmer, it's more powerful. Let's quickly check the wah-wah tone too. And for this example, I'm turning off the modulation, but the uni-vibe's preamp is on, the fuzz is on, and of course we'll check how the wah-wah reacts and how it sounds with the uni-vibe first and then with the uni-vibe after it. And by the way, if you want to learn more about Jimi Hendrix's Uni-Vibe Chronicles and his settings, then just go back to my channel. I have a video up there especially on his average Uni-Vibe setting. If you wore headphones, I'm quite sure that you heard something. So my perception is it was very, very subtle yet noticeable, and it wasn't overwhelming. But the thing that really changed was the playing feel. I believe I now understand why he chose to try this alternative pedal order. And here are 3 reasons sorted by plausibility. So the uni-vibe itself wasn't just another effect to Jimi Hendrix. It was a source of inspiration that really played a big role, a big part in his compositions. The effect itself influenced his way of composing certain songs. So it's absolutely clear that making the effect clearly heard by the audience and felt by the player, by Jimi Hendrix, was absolutely crucial task to Jimi Hendrix. I think that he tried to reproduce the sounds that he just created back in his studio in New York. The second reason, and it's just an assumption, is you might have heard about a guy named Dave Weyer. I already mentioned him in other videos. It's said that Jimi, for one of his US tours, sent his stuff to him and he switched from Roger Mayer to Dave Weyer. And Dave Weyer modded his wah-wah pedal, and it's said to be the modded wah-wah pedal for the Woodstock gig, but that's pretty controversial. But however, Dave Weyer said he worked on the wah-wah pedal and he also worked on the fuzz pedal and on the amps and some other stuff. However, I think if that is true, if this theory is true, then maybe the Dave Weyer modded stuff worked differently. It didn't work the same way the Roger Mayer stuff worked. And so Jimi had to test, he had to switch the order and to keep the order that works best with the Dave Weyer mods. But that's just an assumption. And the third reason is pretty clear. I mean, Jimi Hendrix was pretty experimental in his whole lifestyle and in his whole way of thinking. He was pretty progressive, and maybe he just wanted to see how it sounds when he switches the order. And you know, this is supported by the fact that during the Cry of Love tour, he initially started with this new pedal order that we have just seen and just heard, but then he switched for his last gig that he played on the Isle of Fehmarn in Germany. He switched back to the old order, which is wah into fuzz into uni-vibe. So this underlines a little bit the mindset. You know, he was just experimenting. Maybe he was fed up with the sounds that he was hearing, and then he just changed the order. So this might be the third reason. All right, my friends, I hope you liked this video. And you know, while this may not have been an exciting revelation for some of you because they say, well, we already knew that Jimi Hendrix switched his order, it could have been new to others. So thanks again for watching. And what do you think? Why do you believe that Jimi Hendrix switched the order for some of his last gigs? So I'm really looking forward to reading your comments. Don't forget to like this video and share, spread the word, and well, maybe you want to give me a thanks, or maybe you want to become a new channel member, which is a great way to support my channel. So stay tuned, my friends. I am already working on the next video. See you soon. Take care. Keep on rocking. Bye.